appointments, and I would like to tell you about those appointments. In terms of the Commissions Act, a commission is required to have a secretary. The secretary of a commission is the head of the administration of the commission. And I have appointed to this position Dr. Khotso De Vere, D-E-W-E-E. Dr. De Vere is sitting on my extreme right. He is appointed as the Secretary of the Commission. Dr. De Vere holds a PhD in public administration and has extensive experience in the public service. He was Director General and head of the public service of the Free State Provincial Government from 2000 to 2005. He has also previously acted as Chief Executive Officer of the NPA from 1 August 2008 to March 2011. He was Chief Operations Officer in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development for many years. And he was Acting Secretary General of the Office of the Chief Justice from 1 October 2011 to the end of March 2013. He was now in the private sector, employed by a company that's associated with a university, which has very kindly released him earlier than otherwise they would have, in order to enable him to come and join the commission, because the board of that company appreciated the urgency and the importance to the country of the work of this commission and the role that he needs to play as the secretary of the commission. So he will be the secretary of the commission. There is also going to be a head of investigations. That will be somebody who will lead a team of investigators. And the team of investigators will be a team that will be multidisciplined in order to cope with the type of investigation that this commission is required to conduct. To this position, I have appointed somebody very well known to you and very well known to South Africa, Mr. Terence Mnedisi Nombembe. There he is. You know him very well. He was previously Auditor General of South Africa, a position in which he served this country very, very well. He is going to be the head of investigations and will have a large team of investigators under him. Before he became Auditor General, he had been Deputy Auditor General for a number of years. All in all, by the time he left the office of Auditor General, he had been in a leadership position in that office for just over 13 years. He is currently the Chief Executive Officer of SAICA, the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. And I want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the board of SAICA, who have agreed to second him to the commission because of their appreciation of the importance of the work of the commission to the country, and because of their appreciation of the role that he can play in assisting this commission. He, as I've said, will be leading a large team of investigators, but I've decided that we will not disclose the identity of the investigators to the public for reasons that should be understandable. He has served in a number of bodies, both in terms of the continent and internationally, that is, bodies relating to the accounting profession. He represents Africa and the Middle East on the board of the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. I must correct that. On the board of the International Federation of Accountants. He has also served as a member of the high-level panel that was established by the Speakers Forum to look into and report on the impact of legislation in this country, that was chaired by former President Kgalema Motlanthe. He has served as the Vice President and later as President and Chairman of the African Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. I have no doubt that the Commission will derive a lot of value from Mr. Nombembe's participation in this commission as head of investigations. Of course, every commission must have lawyers. So there is also a team of lawyers who will assist the commission. In the end, there will be quite a large number of lawyers, both advocates and attorneys. But they will be brought in stages in accordance with the demand of the work of the commission. The head of the legal team, the person that I've appointed as the head of the legal team, is Advocate Paul Pretorius, SC. He sits here and he is showing his hand so you can see him. Mr. Paul Pretorius has been an advocate for more than 40 years practicing in Johannesburg. He has been senior counsel since 1994. He has sat as an acting judge in the High Court and the Labor Court on a number of occasions. He brings to the Commission enormous experience as an advocate. He did serve in the early 80s in the Legal Resources Center for 5 years. And I think that was the time when the late Chief Justice Chairperson was the National Director of the Legal Resources Center. He will lead the legal team. But some of the members of the legal team that he will lead are here, but there are others that are not here. We brought you only some. And one of them is Advocate Vincent Maleka, who is sitting to my right. He also is senior counsel, practicing at the Johannesburg Bar. He has been a practicing advocate for about 29 years. And he has been senior counsel for 16 of those years. He brings also enormous experience to the legal team. He has also served as an acting judge in various courts. Then the next member of the legal team is Advocate Leah Kabashe, who is on my extreme left. She is also senior counsel. She has been in practice as an advocate for about 20 years. She worked or had a role and worked with the Amnesty Committee of the Truth Commission. She also served as a member of the Technical Committee to Theme Committee 5 of the Constitutional Assembly. She is a former member of the Judicial Service Commission as well. She too has served as an acting judge in various divisions of the High Court over the past 8 years. And then the last member of the legal team who is present here is Advocate Tandi Norman, SC. She is raising her hand there so you can see her. She is also a practicing advocate. She practices mainly in Durban. She is a senior counsel. She has been in practice as an advocate for about 20 years and also brings enormous experience as a practitioner to the commission. She served or was seconded to the Goldstone Commission in 1995, which was looking into taxi violence in the Eastern Cape. She has also served as an acting judge in the High Court and served also as president of the KZN region of the South African Women Lawyers Association. She too brings enormous practical experience to the commission. I take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them for agreeing to play a role in the work of the Commission. I have absolutely no doubt that they will make a significant contribution to the work of the Commission. That is all about the key appointments, but I will now deal with a few other matters because I know that there are certain things that you definitely want to ask me, so I may as well deal with them. I know, well, let me first say, I did say that in terms of the legal team, there will be many more lawyers who will be in the legal team, but we will not necessarily be announcing them. But there will be many lawyers who will be in the legal team. There will be many investigators too. I have no doubt that you are going to want to know as to when the hearings will start. Well, I can't give you an exact date at the moment, but we have looked at the work that needs to be done by the Commission, and some of the investigations will make it easy for the Commission to commence hearings in regard to those investigations in the next few months. I can't give you anything more definite than that, but in the next few months, I think we will be able to begin. Then there will be other investigations that will take more time. In regard to those investigations, there might be quite some time to wait before the hearings can start. So we are going to do some work already in March. So for purposes of the Commission, we have, I've decided that we can take the 1st of March as the date when the Commission really started its work. So, and in March, we are going to be doing some work that is necessary before investigators go out in the field. But there are some investigators that will begin to go out in the field and conduct investigations already in the next 2 weeks or so. So the Commission will be starting with investigations in terms of investigators going out there doing investigations in the next 2 weeks or so. I must also take this opportunity to say we have also been looking for premises for the Commission, because at this stage we don't have premises that the Commission is using. We have identified premises where the Commission will have its offices. We have identified offices or property where the venue for the hearings will also be. And once we are ready to occupy those offices, there will be a media announcement which will also give the public the address of the Commission, the phone numbers, email addresses, and everything. So that will happen in due course. We hope that it is going to be sometime during April when that should happen. I believe I have exhausted what I thought you might be interested in, but it may be that I'm mistaken. There are questions. We'll take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable DCJ. Colleagues, there you are. You have now an opportunity to ask the questions. In the main, they should be directed to the Chairperson, as you have heard that there isn't much that has been done since the appointment of the personnel from the 1st of March. But I'm sure the DCJ will allow you to direct questions to the personnel as well if he so wishes. So you will introduce yourself and introduce the media house that you represent. How we do it here is that the DCJ prefers to take one question and respond to one question at a time. That might take time, but it allows him to reflect properly on the question that is being asked. So you have the opportunity. Let me see the hands. Who do we start with? Ma'am, I note you. I note you also. I note you. We'll take the first three in that order, and then I'll come back.
Hello, it's Natasha Peter here from AN7. I just want to know, will there be a scope for criminal prosecution from evidence that comes out of the inquiry? If so, how will it be done?
Thank you. Certainly, if after the commission has finished its work and makes its report, which it will present to the president, where it appears that there may have been or there has been criminal conduct, the commission will make recommendations that the relevant authorities look into that issue, and that where prosecutions are justified, they should happen.
Next.
Deputy Chief Justice, thank you for taking my question. It's Fanola from the Commission. My question slightly is tied to my colleagues. With regards to any scope of criminal proceedings being filtered in this particular commission, shortly before the former president tendered his resignation, he made a slight change, an amendment of sort, to the terms of reference to which the commission was applied. It stated that any evidence produced from the commission will not be used in criminal proceedings or criminal cases. Can you just clarify this issue? Are you aware of this? Was it done in consultation with you? Did you approve this issue as well? And then secondly, APIFORUM intends to take this matter up with the Constitutional Court. Will that particular legal proceeding have any implications on this particular issue?
Well, one, as you say, AfriForum, I think, has launched an application in regard to that. So, to a certain extent, one will be limited in terms of what one can say. But let me say this. I don't think it was in the terms of reference. It's in the terms of reference that there is a provision that refers to what you are saying. It's Regulation 8.2, Sub-Regulation 2 of the regulations of the Commission. And it is not as wide as you understand it. As I understand it, all it says is simply that if you give evidence before the commission, the evidence you give may not be used against you in subsequent criminal proceedings. And it doesn't say, for example, that if the police have got evidence from other witnesses, from other people against you, that evidence against you from other witnesses can't be used against you. And it doesn't say that because you have given evidence in the commission, you can't be prosecuted. It just says that your evidence can't be used in subsequent criminal proceedings. Okay. And let me just say that in regard to that regulation is not peculiar to this commission. Therefore, it is not something that the former president might have just done before he resigned. If you look at regulations for a number of other recent commissions, you will find that there is an equivalent provision in them. I think there was a similar provision in the Arms Deal Commission. I think there was a similar provision in the Arms Deal Commission. I think there was a similar provision in some other commission. And I would not be surprised if, when you go back to other commissions a long time ago, you might find, if you were to find that there were similar provisions. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Jenny Quinzel from the Business Day. First, I want to find out, we've seen a few arrests recently in terms of the Estina Dairy Farm project, which forms part of the state capture allegation. How does that affect the Commission and the way the Commission does its work? People are out in bail, people are in court. Will those same people be called to the Commission? So what happens there? We also see a lot of people like to throw out the sub judice argument they can't give evidence or can't talk about the evidence in court. So how would that affect the Commission? And then secondly, and I think just more clarity issue, the evidence leader, is that going to be Advocate Pretorius as head of the legal team?
Well, let me start with the last one. Advocate Pretorius is the leader of the legal team. And when we come to the stage of leading of evidence, sometimes I'm sure he will lead the evidence, but sometimes he will share that with other members of the legal team. Mr. Pretorius, you might wish to just say something about that?
Yeah, that's quite right.
Yeah, thank you. And now back to your first question. Well, the Commission has been given a certain task. It needs to do that, to carry out that task. That task might mean that certain evidence or certain people who have given evidence in other fora might have to give evidence in the Commission as well. If somebody who is required to give evidence in the Commission has a lawful ground not to give the evidence, in other words, that person comes to the Commission and has a lawful ground not to give it and raises that issue would be looked into by the Commission at that time. But with regard to the fact that there are other fora which are investigating, for example, we know that in the National Assembly, there are committees which are hearing certain evidence, and I think actually even today there is evidence being given there. I have no doubt that the committees or those fora, particularly the National Assembly, they would not be as in-depth as the Commission is supposed to be. But what we will do, we will have discussions with the leadership of Parliament and see what can be agreed. But also, we are free to look at the evidence that has already been given in the National Assembly in portfolio committees. We look at that evidence and see to what extent there may be room for us to build on it, and to what extent we might need certain people who have given evidence in some committees of the National Assembly, to what extent we can interview them and in due course ask them to give evidence in the Commission. So the Commission will still do its job, but it will see to what extent what other fora have done is of assistance to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know to Madam, I know to Sir. The third one, you, Sir. Start there.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Justice. It's been so from the Sunday Times. I have a few questions. Some of it is just logistical. Number one, we know that there is a timeline attached to the commission by the court. How are you planning to work around it? The second thing is the terms of reference. Some of the terms of reference are very direct and specific. Some of them are more broader. How are you then going to classify or separate cases and then allocate personnel, per case or prioritize that, that kind of thing? That's my second thing. And then my third question is, You spoke about, referring to what's happening in other forums and stuff. How are you going to deal with the issue of repetition of, stuff that are already in the public domain, and also hostility from witnesses to come and give evidence, as is in the case of Parliament, for example, where, a portfolio committee inquiry has taken so much longer than anticipated.
Thank you. Well, when you refer to the timeline, you are obviously referring to the 180 days that has been given to the Commission. Of course, we know where that comes from. That comes from the Public Protector's remedial action. I think at the previous media conference, I did say that there's no way that we can finish the work of this commission within 180 days, which is 6 months. I have raised the issue with the president, current president, because, as you know, the remedial action that was in the report of the public protector was directed at the president, and the president, in putting the terms of reference and putting this timeline, was simply carrying out the remedial action of the public protector. I have reason to believe that the presidency is looking into the issue as to how it should be dealt with, and I've no doubt that in due course you will get to know how it is going to be dealt with. But what I can say is there is simply no way in which the commission can finish all the work it is supposed to do within 6 months. The other issue you raised relates to the fact that in terms of the terms of reference, there are parts of the terms of reference that are very direct to certain individuals. Well, we are not going to share with the public every way in which we'll deal with certain things. That's the first point. But we are aware of that, and when we do the investigation, we'll see how to handle that, because sometimes there might be certain individuals whose names are mentioned in a number of features of the investigation, whereas others might be mentioned in a limited number of features of the investigation. So we will look at all of that and see how we are going to handle it, but it is not a problem. And then I think you asked about the repetition and hostility. We do not seek to duplicate what may have been done by other fora. But at the same time, as I indicated a few minutes ago, you will appreciate that in the case of, for example, a committee of the National Assembly of Parliament, their investigation might not be as in-depth as the investigation we are supposed to carry out. So we would look at what they have done and see to what extent we need to go further than they did, and then take it from there. You also asked about some of the witnesses maybe displaying hostility towards the commission. The Commissions Act, right with the regulations, gives powers to the commission to deal with witnesses who might not want to give evidence if they've got no lawful reason to refuse to give evidence. So we'll be able to deal with that, with all of that. As you have seen when I introduced some of the members of the legal team, the commission will have the benefit of people who have enormous practical experience, so there will be no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Jean-Pierre from Kijken Verslag. Just on hostile witnesses as well. If the Commission is looking at potential witnesses who are, say, argument's sake, in Dubai or India, then how could they actually go about getting those witnesses in if they just refuse to come? Is there any kind of space legally that the Commission can use, or is that just a...
Also, with regard to that issue, the legal team will look at that issue very closely because obviously it is something that can't escape our attention because of what everyone reads in the newspaper about what's happening. So the legal team will look into those issues and see how that needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
From SABC Africa. Do you as the Commission have any teeth to prosecute? And certainly, what happens to your duties as the Deputy Chief Justice in the period of this Commission?
Thank you. Well, the Commission won't prosecute. So maybe the answer is that we don't have teeth to prosecute. But we'll refer matters that need to be prosecuted to the authorities that have the power to prosecute. The power of the Commission is to investigate the matters that are set out in the terms of reference, make findings, make recommendations, prepare a report, and submit it to the President. Oh, look, I think at the last media conference this question was asked again. At the moment, I don't need to be away from the Constitutional Court on a full-time basis because a lot of work will need to be done by other people in the investigation, and I will just be receiving reports and giving guidance where guidance is needed. But there will come a time when the investigations have been done and I need to be full-time with the Commission. At that stage, I will then be full-time with the Commission. So, but until then, I'm playing my role at the Constitutional Court, but also playing my role in the Commission because there is room to do that. Thank you.
I think we'll take the last round, maybe. I'll start with you, ma'am. I've noted you over there. Another one? Anyone? Okay, that will go on. We'll start with you, ma'am. Only two.
Thank you.
My name is Melody Emmett. I'm a freelancer, so I'm not representing any particular media house. I'm curious to know if it comes to light that a policy directive was given or a policy decision was made as a result of corrupt collaboration between public and private actors, does the Commission have the powers to instruct that that policy is reversed?
Well, the Commission won't have the power to instruct that policy be reversed, but certainly it would fall within the powers of the Commission to make a recommendation about that policy, and if it thinks it should not be there, then it should say it should be withdrawn. So it can make that recommendation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Erin Bates from ENCA. Deputy Chief Justice, just firstly, I know this might be looking very far into the future, but what is the desired outcome here? What is the end product of all the work this team that you've now announced will do, and how much muscle does it have? And my second question is about the investigators you've mentioned. I understand your reluctance to identify them. Can you speak about security concerns around the work that this inquiry will probe, and any issues in terms of, for example, your premises, the identities of investigators and so forth, and whether any of them have police experience? What sort of skills and experience will they bring to your team? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, your first question related to what is the desired outcome. I think the desired outcome is that at the end of this process, of the investigation by this commission and the submission of the report to the President by myself and the release to the public of the report, South Africans hopefully will understand the depth of this state capture issue, to what extent, how deep it was, and how it came about, and what should be done to make sure that South Africa never gets into that situation again. So I think for me, if at the end of this process, this nation is able to say, we now understand the depth of state capture and how it occurred and who were involved in it, then I think that would be very important. Obviously, those who would have committed criminal conduct in relation to the issues of state capture, those would need to be dealt with in terms of our criminal justice system. So that I think is the outcome that one is hoping for. One can't say more than that, because the investigation will be approached very objectively, and it will be done in a very fair way. Those who will appear before the commission, their rights will be respected, and the whole job will be done in a manner that is proper, that is thorough, and that is professional. With regard to issues of security, well, I did say that with regard to investigators, the team that Mr. Nombembe will be leading will be a multidisciplinary team, and I've no doubt that there will be some who have experience with regard to police work. And so that will be a multidisciplinary team, so as to make sure that our investigation is as effective as possible, because there can be no doubt that the investigation that is required here requires certain different skills. Otherwise, we won't be able to do it properly if we don't have those skills. So we are very much alive to the need for different skills in terms of investigation. In terms of security, we are very conscious of the need for security, and we are taking all reasonable steps to make sure that the issue of security is given priority. That's what I can tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and to you, DCJ, and honorable key personnel of the Commission. For more details regarding the CVs of the key personnel, it shall be loaded on our website, the judiciary website. You'll find it there, and you'll also see the pictures that we're going to take in the short run. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you. Thank you very much.
We just want to take the pictures as they go out.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. You want to do that for me? Thank you very much. Do that for me. Thank you very much.